Hello and welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. I am Emily Proud. A reminder to hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. I'll explain why at the end of the show. You definitely want to make sure you're subscribed this upcoming week. But first, let's talk about what's actually on today's show. So let's go ahead and show you what's on tap. We go around the country for the latest recruiting intel from our experts, and we're going to make a stop in Auburn for a recap from Big Cat Weekend. We'll tell you how many Alabama commits they've flipped over the weekend. And let me tell you, it's not one. Plus, a huge development in college sports in the courtroom. We'll tell you how it affects your favorite team. But first, let's hit those headlines. I guess we should call this one a flip-flop, as a four-star defensive lineman Antonio Coleman flipped back to Auburn from Alabama for the second time. Our friend Christian Clemente will tell us if he thinks it's the final flip in just a bit. But speaking of the Tigers, Auburn also landing a commitment from top 247 corner Blake Woodby. The St. Francis standout is the third-ranked player in Baltimore and ninth top 247 player in Auburn's 2025 class. It's not just Auburn news. We have a lot of it, but we are sticking in the SEC here. Three-star defensive lineman Josiah Sharma flipping his commitment from Oregon to Texas. Now, he had been committed to the Ducks for a little over 3 weeks, but is now pledged with the Longhorns. And finally, the number 2 ranked running back in the 2026 class is officially spoken for. Tredarian Ball announcing his commitment to Oregon over the weekend. He is their second and highest ranked pledge in the 2026 class. It's time now to go around the country, get the latest recruiting intel. You're going to hear from national recruiting analysts Tom Loy, Brandon Huffman, and Alan True. So here's Tom to start off the recruiting roundup.
Thanks, Emily. Let's dive into the recruitment of Greensboro, North Carolina Grimsley High 5-star quarterback Faizon Brandon. He has an August 3rd commitment date set, and he's going to do that live with 24/7 Sports. Let's look at the finalists. You got Alabama, Tennessee, NC State, and LSU. This is the number 1 player in the class of 2026. He could take his time and pretty much go anywhere he wants to go, and yet he's narrowed it down and he's ready to make a decision. My 24/7 Sports crystal ball remains on the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, this has been back and forth and kind of close between them and the Crimson Tide. LSU is also in play, but he's fresh off another trip to Knoxville. And to be completely honest, I just can't see Josh Heupel and his staff missing out on the elite talent. So I fully expect come August 3rd, Faizon Brandon commits to Tennessee. Let's move on to Georgia, because I want to hear about the latest with Josh Petty, 5-star offensive tackle out of Roswell, Georgia Fellowship Christian School. He has a commitment date set for August 12th. Now, the finalists are kind of up in the air. You definitely have Florida State, Georgia Tech, Ohio State, Stanford, and Tennessee in the mix. This is the number 14 overall player in the class of 2025, according to 24/7 Sports. Now, the latest buzz has had Florida State trending in the right direction, but for me, I'm really close to putting in a crystal ball pick for Georgia Tech. I feel like that staff has done an excellent job with his process. I feel like there's some pull to try to keep him close to home, and I know he's connecting really well with the guys in that locker room. So don't be surprised if things start swinging in favor of the Yellow Jackets. The last one I want to talk about is Cedarian Morgan, one of the top overall players in the class of 2026. He's out of Alexander City, Alabama, and he goes to Benjamin Russell High School. Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State. Those are pretty much the teams at the highest for him, the top contenders, if you will. Growing up, he really wanted to go to Alabama. That was the dream offer. But recently, especially after this past weekend, Auburn is trending in the right direction. They've even added some crystal ball picks. My crystal ball pick still is on the Crimson Tide, but this is a back and forth two-way race. I think that when push comes to shove and Morgan wants to make a final decision, I think he's going to end up having a hat for Alabama and a hat for Auburn on the table. Again, don't rule out Ohio State. He loves everything about that school and everything Brian Hartline is doing, but I think the pull to keep the number 20 overall player in the country in state is strong enough. So again, my pick is on the Tide. Other picks are on the Tigers. Long way to go. It's going to be a great battle. Now let's head west to hear from Brandon Huffman.
Thanks, Tom. Well, this past weekend, Oregon hosted their SNL Saturday Night Live camp inside Autzen Stadium. With the NCAA going to a completely dead July in 2025, this is the Ducks' last chance to host their summer event in the month of July. They had some of the best players in the country there, including the number 2 player in 2026, Chris Henry Jr. out of Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana. Now, Henry actually spent this weekend celebrating his one-year commitment to Ohio State by being at Oregon. The Ducks had long been a threat to the Buckeyes. If there was ever a school that could really be a thorn in the side of Ohio State for Henry, it has been Oregon. He's been saying for months that Oregon has been recruiting him the hardest outside of Ohio State. He was also supposed to visit LSU earlier in the week, but Oregon got him on campus and got him to work out with Junior Adams at Saturday Night Live. Now, he wasn't the only top 100 player committed to another school that Oregon was able to host this weekend. Brandon Lockhart, another top 100 player in the 2026 class out of Loyola High School in Los Angeles, has been committed to USC for quite some time, but he committed back when Dante Williams was the defensive backs coach for the Trojans. Since then, Dante Williams has gone on to Georgia. Lockhart remains committed to USC, but Oregon has been trying with him. Chris Hampton, Tosh Lapoy, and Dan Lanning have all been putting their hooks into Brandon Lockhart to try to get him to flip as well. We've seen what Oregon has been able to do with long-standing commits to other schools and then flipping them late. Now they're trying to get in on a couple of guys that won't even sign for another year, but are both heavily coveted, not just by the schools they're committed to, but by national programs. So it was big this weekend for Oregon to get both Henry and Lockhart on campus, especially coming on the heels of them getting a commitment from Tredarian Ball, the 2026 running back, who's the number 2 back in the country in his class. Now, for more recruiting information, we go to our guy, Alan True.
Now, the big upcoming commitment in the Midwest is that of 5-star safety Trey McNutt. We've been breaking down his recruitment quite frequently here as he's one of the top and few uncommitted 2025s in the Midwest. He delayed his decision in order to get another visit into Texas A&M and then to Oregon. Oregon was the leader going into those visits. I believe coming out of that, they remain the team to beat. I believe he will likely end up choosing the Ducks unless something changes this week. They got the last at bat as he went to A&M first and then finished off his July visits out in Eugene. They have a great plan for him. I think he sees a great fit there. I think he has a great relationship with the coaching staff. And the Ducks have simply done an outstanding job whenever they've been able to get recruits on campus. And they've now had him on campus twice in the last 2 months. So I think when looking at that secondary class, he fits in extremely well with the Dorian Brews and the other defensive backs that they've picked up. And I believe they will add another in Trey McNutt. Although, as I've said in the past, I expect other schools like A&M, Ohio State, Florida, and others to continue recruiting him right until he signs on the dotted line. Now, as I mentioned, there are very few uncommitted 2025s in the Midwest. I could see another one coming off the board soon in linebacker Will Hawthorne from the state of Iowa. He told me recently he doesn't have a decision date locked in yet, but is still expecting to make the call before the end of the month. Obviously, he's running out of time if he's going to get it in before August begins. It comes down to 2 schools, Nebraska and Iowa State. Iowa State's the in-state school. They had offered earlier and built a strong relationship with him, but Nebraska has come in and really made a strong play. I felt like it was the Cyclones' recruitment to lose throughout. I think Nebraska has now made things extremely interesting, which is why I believe this decision has been delayed a little bit as well. He had originally talked about potentially making a decision in early July. We're now reaching the end of the month and he still has not announced a commitment. So I think Nebraska is giving him something to think about while Iowa State has been there for longer. We're moving into 2026 recruiting quite a bit in the Midwest as well, with several big barbecues and junior days happening over the weekend. Michigan had one and offered in-state tight end Lincoln Keys, one of the top 2026s, and what is really a loaded tight end class in the state of Michigan and the Midwest. Keys is from not too far away at Saline, and so a lot of folks expect the Wolverines to be the school he chooses and maybe soon. However, I think he's going to wait his decision out, go through the season, and I don't think it's a slam dunk for Michigan, even though he admits he grew up a Michigan fan. Georgia offered earlier in the summer, Ohio State's offered, Michigan State has offered. Those are all schools he says he hopes to get to in the fall for games. He also has offers from other schools in the region and from around the country that I expect he may try to get to in the offseason. So right now, Michigan's primary competition comes from the Spartans, the Buckeyes, and Georgia is the team from out of region to watch. He did admit to going to a lot of Michigan games growing up. They're very close by. They use the tight end. He has a great relationship with position coach Steve Kasula. So a lot of things going for Michigan in that recruitment, but I do not believe it's going to be just the layout for Michigan. And I do expect Lincoln Keys to take his time in that recruitment.
Thank you all so much. We have the best recruiting team there is, so check out more of their work at 247sports.com. You've got VIP info, recruiting rankings, and exclusive coverage. Find it all at 247sports.com. It was Big Cat Weekend down in Auburn, Alabama. The recruiting visit weekend was filled with fun, food, and most importantly, commitments. The Tigers now boast the number 11 class in 2025, and that's the end of all the things I know about the weekend, which is why we are bringing on our expert, Christian Clemente from Auburn Undercover, to talk a little bit more about this. Christian, let's start with we saw the video. It looked like fun, but what exactly happens at Big Cat Weekend?
Yeah, Big Cat Weekend is Auburn's event that they've had since the Gene Chizik era there in 2009 is really when he got started. It's always been at the end of July, and it's always kind of, other teams are doing it now as well. It's a barbecue, cookout, chill, everybody relax. There's not a lot of football involved. The only football this weekend was the recruits playing the new college football video game. It's everyone hanging out. The families are there of the recruits. The coaches' families are there. They did a scavenger hunt all around campus, going to Toomer's Corner. They went to the basketball arena, the indoor, of course. They're going all over the place. And so it's scavenger hunt. Last year they had a pool party where obviously Perry Thompson flipped and Hugh Freeze got thrown in the pool. Some thunderstorms canceled the pool party this year, but everyone kind of hung out at the indoor facility after the scavenger hunt, and obviously it led to a lot of success on the recruiting trail.
You mentioned last year the big splash. We kept using that when it comes to them jumping in the pool. I'm curious, since that was Hugh Freeze's first time doing it last year, where did you sense a difference maybe in the attendance or just the overall, just how big this weekend was? Did you sense any sort of difference?
I think there was a much bigger desire, at least going into the event, of recruits wanting to be there. Perry Thompson and Coach Freeze getting thrown in the pool, it creates kind of an aura around the event. Everyone sees that on social media, and all these recruits, they're like, what's going on over at Auburn? What's this Big Cat Weekend? I want to be there for that. And Auburn's visitor list for Saturday was absolutely loaded. Top guys in the 25 class, top guys in the 2026 class. Everyone wanted to be there. And then there was kind of an expectation, okay, well, if we've got all these guys there, it better be a good weekend, because we need to have a good Big Cat Weekend next year. And so they leave the day obviously with 5 commitments throughout the day. So now there's a lot of excitement already going into next year. Now it won't be at the end of July, but what will Big Cat be like next year?
Yes, the fun is great, but ultimately you want some results. Already seeing some of those. We mentioned at the top of the show, Auburn flipping Antonio Coleman, the 4-star defensive lineman from Alabama, for a second time. Christian, how confident are they that this is the last time they'll have to do that?
Look, in this recruitment, you can absolutely never say never. But it seems like there's confidence on the plains that Antonio Coleman is going to stick this time. Honestly, going into the weekend, it was kind of I don't want to say last ditch effort, but it was almost a now or never situation. He's rejoining the class now, or we're done with this recruitment. We need to move on and focus on other defensive linemen. And there was a sense that if he didn't flip by Monday or Tuesday, he's sticking with Alabama. Auburn's kind of done. They're moving on. Obviously, Saturday night, he ends up deciding to make the flip, and now there is confidence that Auburn will be able to hold on to his commitment. He didn't go visit Alabama on Sunday as he had planned to, so we'll see if things are over. I personally think they are, but again, with this recruitment, he's been committed to the 2 in-state schools 2 different times, so we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens with that. We already saw what happened with Auburn flipping another Alabama commit and 4-star athlete Derek Smith. Walk us through how they pulled this one off.
Yeah, this is a guy that they've coveted for a really, really long time. Committed to Alabama as a safety, really intriguing player. Auburn has loved him as a wide receiver the whole time, and I do think that positional preference a little bit helped Auburn, but also the push of Hugh Freeze, the push of wide receivers coach Marcus Davis. His area recruiter is Charles Kelly, who was recruiting him as a safety all the way back at Alabama in 2022. So he's known the Auburn staff for a really long time. His cousin is on Auburn's roster, Jeremiah Wright, the offensive lineman. And so all of those factors kind of played in. And when he was back for Big Cat Weekend, going into it, we knew Auburn sat in a really good spot to potentially pull it off. Saturday night, he actually ends up making the flip and goes public with it on Monday.
Anytime you land a commitment, it's a big deal, but something tells me that if you're an Auburn fan out there, you're liking how this segment is going in terms of all the flips from Alabama commits as well. This one No commitment yet, but we are waiting to hear top 247 safety Anquan Fagans. He is set to announce later today, so we have about an hour to go. What's your final prediction for him?
Yeah, my crystal ball has been on Auburn. I know Tom Loy has a crystal ball in for Auburn as well. We've really felt like Auburn has been the team to beat, honestly, dating all the way back to January. That's right around when Charles Kelly was hired to coach the safety position. He recruited Anquan's older brother, Traquan, to Alabama. Anquan's other older brother, Antoine, is now on Auburn's roster as a preferred walk-on. Auburn has kind of set this one up perfectly. They've been in a good spot since January. He's definitely made the rounds. He's gone to visit all the other schools. I know he saw LSU last week before going to Big Cat Weekend. He went to Alabama on Sunday. Georgia and Clemson have been in the mix as well. But, an hour, 2 hours away from his decision, Auburn is definitely in a really good spot to get his commitment and keep winning the state of Alabama there.
I know it's Monday, but I think things are still happening. That's why they call it Big Cat Weekend. So any notable names who plan on being there today that we need to know about?
Yes, so Ryder Lyons, the five-star quarterback out of California, he was on campus on Monday. He was there. He's still on campus right now at 4 o'clock. It was an all-day visit, and so Auburn is definitely involved with him, seeing if they can chip away. I know USC is kind of viewed as the favorite. Oregon involved as well, and he's gone on kind of a Southeast tour. Also saw Alabama, LSU, and I believe Ole Miss as well. But now it's Auburn's turn to chip away a little bit, and there were some other guys on campus as well. Caden Prothrow, a tight end in the 26 class. So look, Auburn's getting these guys on campus a bunch, and they've got the number one class in 2026, and a guy like Ryder Lyons would absolutely add to that if they're able to make something happen.
I know they've definitely been looking for their quarterback of the future, so hoping to land him as well, but already seeing the fruition from Big Cat Weekend. Christian, thank you so much for being here. You can check out more of his work at auburnundercover.com. You just heard the Tigers are expecting more action in the coming days, coming minutes, really, so keep it locked into auburnundercover.com. Major news relating to the past and future of college football. The House Settlement Agreement is here, and the 100-plus page document hits on two big points: back damages to previous athletes, and also lays the groundwork for the future, like revenue sharing, full rosters, and a cleaner NIL model. And of course, with all of that comes enforcement. So when it is time to talk about legal matters, we bring in Bud Elliott of the Cover 3 podcast. Let's start big picture here. Explain just how impactful what happened over the weekend was.
Sure, Emily. So first of all, great to see you again after seeing you at Big Ten. This is basically one of the lawsuits where the bill for kicking the can down the road for so long has come due for the NCAA and its member institutions. So this House case concerned back NIL. So basically the schools colluded to prevent you from earning NIL, and you clearly had market value, and the schools were like, no, you didn't. But the courts were like, it's very obvious that you did. You should settle this case. And thus they settled the case. So the schools will be paying back NIL to athletes who were denied the opportunity to earn that NIL during their college careers over a certain amount of period. And then also they will now be revenue sharing with athletes going forward, up to $22 million in the first year, which is the average revenue of the Power 4 schools that they're able to share on a certain basis.
And there's so many different tentacles to this. I will say that I did look it up. I don't meet the threshold. I'm a little too old to cash in on my NIL deals from playing women's soccer, which I know would have been very, very fruitful. There's also a big focus on cleaning up NIL and payments to players, which a lot of people have been asking for. But somebody's got to govern this. So how is this governing body, the clearinghouse, the special master, these are all the terms that they used in this settlement. How is that different from the NCAA?
Sure. So basically, I'm going to explain to you how they kind of want it to work, they being the schools, and then also why it might not work. So the schools are basically going to say, hey, if you accept our revenue sharing model here, then you're not allowed to earn outside NIL that is essentially de facto pay for play. And we're going to have like an independent clearinghouse you kind of review all of these deals over $600, which good luck with that. Now, you may win, right? Like these schools may be correct here that you are not allowed to do that unless it's quote unquote true NIL, which who's the judge of that? I guess this independent committee will be. The reason why I'm skeptical that this actually will hold up in court is because what if you're just a regular student on campus and you have a marketing deal for more than $600? Do you have to submit that to the government, right, to have them review it? So lots of lawsuits to follow. It's almost as if the attorneys in this settlement kind of scratch the back of other attorneys out there. A lot of billable hours to come.
Yeah, over $600. That could apply to tons of recruits out there. And this is the college football recruiting show. So along those lines, any advice for how recruits can navigate this when it does go into effect?
I would say just largely follow the advice of your agent and of the schools. Now, I will say this, Emily, you see it, I see it. The schools are spending way more than this $22 billion, right? Like, I don't think a lot of these schools are taking this whole clearinghouse thing seriously. And if the schools aren't taking it seriously at the very top, then maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe they know, or at least have good reason to believe, that this whole clearinghouse thing probably won't last and stand up to scrutiny in court once they get sued over it, which we're already seeing certain groups talk about suing over it. But I mean, if the school's offering it to you, I would take it. I don't think you need to be really cautious about that. And I really strongly do not believe that they're going to rule, hundreds of athletes ineligible. It's just not. That just feels like something NCAA would have done maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. But they're a little bit better at PR nowadays.
Yes, and this is a great example of that, like you said, kicking the can down the road. It's officially come due, but we wish that this was maybe a final draft to what the future of college football is going to look like. So if it is just that first draft, what's in this that could potentially pave the way for how to maybe better govern NIL and have it be more that true NIL that they speak about?
Sure. So I think you could 100% enforce this as they do in the NFL. Like, if I'm the 49ers, I can't go and sign Emily Proud and be like, hey, we really don't have room under the salary cap here, but here's a $20 million endorsement deal, right? Because there are penalties for that. Oh, but wait, the athletes agreed to those restrictions through collective bargaining, and they're actually employees. They're not unilaterally imposed upon those NFL players. The college athletes so far are not employees, not yet. And they are also not engaged in any kind of collective bargaining, which is the whole reason why parts of this settlement might not hold up to long-term court scrutiny. But with the Johnson case coming, which I'm sure you'll have me back on to discuss soon, athletes may be ruled employees in short order. But I do think that this could help along with player movement a little bit. One thing I think as college ball fans that we are sick of is like a player on our team and having him move. Now with the roster sizes increasing to 105, let's take a school like a Georgia, right? Georgia's probably going to take about 8 more high school commits per year, maybe 10, somewhere in that range, 6 to 10-ish. Those kids are probably going to be some kids that would have gone to like South Carolina, or Arkansas, or some of those lesser SEC schools within Georgia's footprint. And the kids that hit will stay, and the kids that don't hit will probably hit the road. So most likely, like, the players that are Georgia's quality will be on Georgia's roster from the word go. They won't be signing somewhere else and then transferring to. So I think we're going to see a lot more transferring down, but a lot less transferring up in the coming years.
Yeah, you read my mind. So we talked about this last week, is that NIL doesn't seem to be the issue. It's the fact that it's a free agency every single year and you have that player movement. Yeah. So you mentioned the roster sizes. I think this is something that a lot of people think that they care about, but maybe won't really affect things all that much, and that's the walk-on. So how does that affect what happens to the walk-on position when everybody will be under scholarship?
So it's a great question. I believe the way I read it, you can still have walk-ons, but you cannot have walk-ons in excess of the 105-man roster cap. Now, there will probably be schools that have 0, 1, or 2 walk-ons, right? There will probably be some schools that elect to have just 105 full scholarship players. I think most of the SEC probably will go to that model eventually. I could see a lot of the Big Ten and probably a couple ACC schools, maybe Notre Dame, maybe a Big 12 too, maybe a couple Big 12, depending on how you want to do it. And for some schools, they might just be like, all right, if you made the team, you're on scholarship, even though you're kind of walk-on quality. Because you do actually still need some human tackling dummies to run practice squad. Like, that is important. But ultimately, what they don't want to have is schools just hoarding talent, 110, 115, 120 guys who are scholarship quality. And so that they put that hard and fast 105 cap in there.
Yeah, that's what was crazy reading about all of this today, is they're using terms like a cap and antitrust and collective bargaining and all these types of things. It's, I would say it's coming, but officially it is here. So thank you for being here, and keep your phone line open. We'll be calling you when the Johnson case comes down as well, Bud. We appreciate it. You can listen to Bud and the gang on the Cover 3 podcast if for some reason you've been MIA for the offseason, need to get caught up. No judgment here. Just check out the pod and you'll be ready to go for the upcoming season. Also, we have a recruiting rankings update coming soon, so keep it locked in to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel on Wednesday for a special recruiting pod and the class of 2026 rankings update that will take place at noon Eastern. And Commit HQ is getting the 5-star treatment. A pair of 5-star prospects are set to commit right here in the coming days. First up, the number 1 player in 2026, quarterback Faizon Brandon. He is deciding between Alabama, LSU, NC State, and Tennessee. Later, we've got wide receiver Khalil Lockett. You can watch Wednesday, August 7th at 1 Eastern, where he is picking between Alabama, Florida State, LSU, Texas, and Texas A&M. So if you are not already locked in to the YouTube channel, make sure that you hit that thumbs up button on the way out, hit the little bell button so you get alerts when things like this happen, because it's about to be busy. It's go time, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This was the College Football Recruiting Show.